Hey everybody, Kevin from Storytellers Union here again, continuing my conversation with you about the best albums of 2023. If you missed the first video of this series, it was my honorable mentions still here on the channel. Go check it out. Today, though, we are going to start the countdown proper. We're looking at the top 30 albums of the year, and this video will cover albums 30 through 21. So without further ado, let's get started with number 30. The first one here on my list of the best albums of this past year is a favorite of mine, Josh Ritter, Spectral Lines. Loved Josh for a long time, and I'll be honest, at first I wasn't quite sure what to think of this record. He is one of my favorite songwriters, but it took a few listens for this one to really reveal itself to me, and I think that you, upon repeated listening, will find it equally rewarding. It's not a casual listen at all. The sum is greater than the parts here. There's not as many individual songs as in past efforts that might stand out, but it really is the collective feeling that he is going for here. And you can tell that that was the intention because there's not even a break between most songs. They sort of flow one into the other. So it creates this dreamlike trance of a feeling. And it's quiet, but it's not sleepy, and the lyrics lean maybe more towards the impressionistic than Josh has done in the past. But the cumulative effect, again, of all these connections that he's making between these different songs is a really profound experience on love and acceptance. And it was something that he intentionally crafted to be different than the rest of his catalog. And I think in that regard, it is a great success. So definitely a grower, but give it some time. Number 29, Jenny Lewis, Joy Y'all. This is another favorite of mine who I have followed for quite some time. And if you are a fan of Jenny Lewis and her Rallo Kali days, you will really enjoy Joy Y'all because she has not sounded this country, this Americana really, maybe since at least the very first solo album of hers. And some is even reminiscent of the earlier Rallo Kali works. She stripped things back, and I think that it was to the music and the materials benefit in this instance. She's had a couple of really great pop records, and it's hard to say where you go from there. This one came from a different place in her personally. She has very much pointed to the fact that this album was a rebuke of her own isolation as a touring musician and entertainer who spent most of her life on the road. The pandemic, the forced stop that she and the world went through, put her in a place where she had to reckon with herself and sit still for a while. And so she used that opportunity to be creative, to work with friends over Zoom, to challenge one another, Beck being a chief among those who would lay down a writing challenge as to what to write about, and the other artists would have to comply with something. And what you have is really indicative of the title. Joy is right there in the title, and Joy All is what she was hoping to put into the world with this album. Not only was it conceived during what were dark times, but they were dark times for her personally as well. She lost her mother, with whom she had a complicated relationship. And, you know, while some artists will turn this into a deep dive into their feelings, Jenny decided that it was going to be a deep dive into her acceptance of herself and some of the demons and obstacles and the complicated relationship with her mom and all of it, and reflect that back out as joy at a time that the world needed it. And if you want to have a taste of what the rest of the record is, the single that you're most likely to have heard is Puppy and a Truck. And that probably tells you all you need to know about how this is in general a more lighthearted album from Jenny Lewis, but that is far from meaning that it is superficial. Worth a listen. Jenny Lewis's Joy All, number 29. Number 28 is another old favorite, and I know that there's a lot of that on my top 30, but that is because some of these artists, when you get into their work, you will become fans for life and will follow them wherever they go. Old Crow Medicine Show, unlike what I was talking about with both Josh and Jenny having changed things up a bit, Old Crow Medicine Show doesn't change anything, and that's not to the detriment of the music at all. It is just to say that they have pulled off quite the trick on their career, and it is, how do you stay a traditionalist rooted in a very specific type of roots music without feeling like you're going through the motions or repeating yourself. And Old Crow Medicine Show have managed album after album to stay true to roots music and to themselves, but also providing an engaging listen, which they have done once again on Jubilee. Bluegrass, Americana, everything you always expect from Old Crow, here in abundance on some of the best songs I think that they've had in a while. In particular, I will call out to you the highlight of Miles Away. I would put this album on my list if it was only to talk to you about Miles Away. It is the highlight. Think of a modern day version of The Band is what this song comes across to me. There's multiple vocalists. What makes, I think, that even more powerful for those who are fans of the band is that one of those vocalists is Willie Watson, former Old Crow Medicine Show member who acrimoniously parted with the band some time ago. And Miles Away is a song about repentance and reconciliation, forgiveness, and the fact that they brought an estranged member back into the fold and he agreed to participate. And then they put together a song as compelling as Miles Away. It will bring a lump into the throat of any Old Crow Medicine Show fan. Honestly, if you didn't even know that backstory and you hear the song, you should have that lump in your throat. It's one of the better songs of the year on my number 28 album of the year. That is Old Crow Medicine Show's Jubilee. Moving on to number 27, we have the duo The Kills with their latest God Games. We're 20 years at this point into the career of the Kills, and 7 years, the longest period yet between albums for them. They have delivered one of their best here this late in their games. So God Games is true to their formula, which is Alison Moss Hart's powerful vocals. She's one of the best vocalists in all of rock music, one of the best screamers for certain in rock music. And Jamie Hintz is one of the best riff men on guitar. So you put those two combined talents together, you have what the Kills have always done, and that is a swaggering, snarling version of rock. But they do add in a few new elements this time around. There's some synths that kind of smooth some of the edges on a few of the songs. Just texture and variety, does nothing to dampen the impact of what is a great rock band and a great rock album. God Games, number 27 by The Kills. Number 26, Lana Del Rey's Did You Know That There Is a Tunnel Underneath Ocean Boulevard? Lana Del Rey, I just want to start by saying apologies to Miss Del Rey, because I had not paid attention to her in quite some time. I was one of those who had checked out early on when she first came into prominence. The critics, were obviously effusive in their praise and got me interested. And I was one of those who had my first real exposure to her with her infamous Saturday Night Live performance, which she herself will now say she was not ready for. And it was so famously bad that I made a snap judgment and just thought, oh, okay, this is not good. This is not for me. And even as years went on and she continued to get good reviews, for whatever reason, it was just never enough to move me to check things out I would intend to, and then not. Even Bruce Springsteen is a fan. And of course, I'm a big Springsteen fan. You think that alone would have moved me over to giving a second look at Lana Del Rey. And then earlier this year, I heard A&W, and the song, starts off pleasant enough. And I thought, oh, okay, I kind of like this. It's folky. And for those of you familiar with the song, obviously it takes a turn, and it was very ear catching to me. It was unexpected, and it goes into this real experimental production, almost a trap sort of beat and sound, and that outro just builds on itself. And I thought, this is really fantastic. How have I slept on this? I checked out the rest of the record, and that experimental production and just the way she combines classic forms with experimentation and does so with aplomb. And it's fantastic, honestly. And I realized that this is why you don't make snap judgments. This is why you always give something a second or third listen. You don't dismiss things out of hand, because I could not have been more wrong about the considerable talents of Lana Del Rey. And that's before I even mentioned anything about the actual songwriting. I'm just talking about song structure and sound here, but the lyrics as well. She is a triple threat of talent, and definitely one of the better albums of 2023 is the latest from Lana Del Rey. I will be digging deeper into the back catalog as well to make sure that I am up to speed and do not get caught off guard again. I was wrong. I was just simply wrong. Go check out Lana Del Rey's Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? 25, Portugal the Man. Chris Black Changed My Life. Chris Black was a filmmaker, a friend of Portugal the Man. He passed away, and obviously affected the band greatly for them to title their new record after him. He was, in fact, he toured at one point with the band, not as a member, but more of as like a hype man. Just that's the kind of closeness they had in their relationship. It is not, though, a dark record. It is a record about how those that mean something to you are worth celebrating, and those memories are worth having while you still have those folks around. The band is coming off the heels of their biggest success yet. So for them to follow that up, it would be very easy to try to repeat that formula when most of their career they've been known for their wild experimentation. And how do you do both of those things at the same time? You do Chris Black Changed My Life, because that is exactly what they do. They don't try to recreate Feel It Still, which was the out of nowhere top 10 hit. They had a top 10 Billboard hit. If there was a band that was the most unlikely to be in the Billboard top 10, Portugal the Man would be right up there, especially when you look at what today's modern pop charts look like. They certainly would not fit into that mold. There's nothing here on Chris Black Changed My Life that had that same impact as far as the charts go, but they still don't shy away from showcasing their pop side. It's something they've always done. R&B, dance, those are styles of music that they do incorporate into their weird psychedelia, but they continue to do so as if completely unaffected by having a hit that they felt any sort of pressure at all to repeat. Instead, what they do is they craft a celebration that incorporates pop with everything they've ever done and do it in honor of a friend. Makes for a very good listen, something that is a worthy statement in addition to the catalog of Portugal the Man. Number 24, Duran Jones, Wait Till I Get Over. I first became a fan of Duran Jones based on his work with his band, The Indications, and that band tends to trade in a retro soul, which I very much enjoy. So for a solo album, what Duran Jones has done that he maybe could not have done with his band is experiment with styles outside of that retro soul sound, but still very much rooted in the history of Black music. He also has crafted what is a very personal record that I think probably comes more into focus as such by the fact that he is doing it under his own moniker and not with that of others. So it's maybe a little more raw. You will hear hints, I think, in it of some of the greats like Stevie Wonder. There are times that I heard some Bill Withers, more modern touchstone, still old at this point, but Terrence Trent D'Arby, who I was a big fan of in the 90s. Some of the vocals here sound like that. It's definitely a little rawer than the work that Duran Jones does with the Indications, but it, again, as I said earlier, it's also more personal. This is his story. At some point, early in the album, he tells the literal history of the hometown in which he grew up. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone here, but it is a complicated history of a Louisiana town in the Deep South. And so this album, Wait Till I Get Over, very much is Duran Jones' experience, both as a black man growing up in the Deep South. Also, there's a song on here to the first time that he experienced queer love, which again is a very personal telling that I think is well more suited to a solo album than a group effort. And the production just sounds like a classic soul record. So even when he strays from that soul path and you get funk and things like that into the stew, it reads to me like it could have been recorded in the 1970s, and we're still listening to it today because it would stand that test of time. I mean all of that as a complete and utter compliment to Duran Jones and what he's managed to create with Wait Till I Get Over. Number 23 on my best albums of 2023 is Blur. Now, spoiler alert here, this will not be the first time I talk about Damon Albarn on my list. He had a busy year. But this entry here is for what most associate Damon with, and that is the band Blur. Now, Blur had not had an album in 8 years. That is the longest they have ever gone without having an album. Just by way of comparison, his side project, Gorillaz, has had 4 albums just in that span. He had a solo album in that span. It was very realistic, I think, for fans to maybe wonder whether or not Damon had anything more to say using the Blur platform. Fortunately for us, he did. What happened was they had a bit of a reunion tour. He wrote while on the road with Gorillaz. The feeling from the reunion, the writings he came up with while on tour, it is the basis for the Ballad of Darren. And Blur's never really made the same album twice, and their latest is no different in that regard. It contains elements of the Britpop that they had championed and were the pioneers of really back in the 90s when they started, along with Oasis. They were the leading lights of that sound. That is still there, though there are only a few songs that really have that up-tempo feel that you might attribute to those early years. This is definitely a more gentler album. It is a beautifully produced record. There's a meticulousness to the production. Every element is in its place. Everything can be heard. Nothing overwhelms anything else. It can be quite symphonic at times. So most things do tend towards the melancholy or the mid-tempo. There are a few rockers on here, but it is a very much worthy new entry into the work of Blur. And hopefully not another 8 years before we hear the next statement from Damon Albarn's band Blur. Number 22, The Hold Steady, The Price of Progress. The Hold Steady came out of the gates more than 20 years ago with 4 classic records, and then they fell into a bit of a mid-career malaise where they were seeming to try to find themselves a little bit. Craig Finn has gone off and done some remarkable work on some solo albums. Craig is the lead singer, and he's always been great with the details, story details that are very rich and evocative. And, he's done it in this post-punk style with the Hold Steady. On his solo albums, he was way more singer-songwriter. And by having mellower arrangements, quieter music, you actually were able to not just shout along on the stories, you were able to actually take in the stories maybe a little more, just because he could be heard without, as much in the way of loud guitars. So beginning on the Hold Steady's last record and then continuing here on The Price of Progress, they seem to have found a great middle ground that is, helped with a late career renaissance in my mind. And the Price of Progress not only is a continuation of that renaissance, it's even an improvement on the last album, which was already great. I think they have found that balance of what the Hold Steady can sound like today without repeating themselves, with still sounding their age, but they've definitely learned some lessons from Craig Finn's solo work. I think his time away from the Hold Steady has benefited the band in that when he comes back, he is a different type of singer and songwriter now. And I think this is some of the best work that anyone did this year. And it really points a path forward from where they can continue to do this at such a high level while never repeating themselves. And then the final album for this edition of the Top 30 Countdown will end on number 21, Low Cut Connie Art Dealers. Low Cut Connie made their bones as a good time rock and roll band. Lead singer and architect of the band, Adam Weiner, he plays his piano like a modern day Jerry Lee Lewis. If you've ever seen a live performance from him, you know what I mean. We got piano stools being kicked over. We got pounding on the keys. Obviously associated with rollicking music and good times. That is still here, but it also represents a maturity in Adam's songwriting where he is able to merge that type of rock music with more personal stories. And he provides in Art Dealers a very evocative portrait of the overlooked and ignored, I guess, for lack of better words. And that does not mean this is a down listen, because many of these songs are very much summing up joy in these self-portraits. But on its surface level, if you're only just listening for the music and you're a fan of classic rock and roll, this Low Cut Connie record is going to sound like a Low Cut Connie record of any period. But if you dig deeper, you'll find it in these really inclusive, immersive portraits from the LGBT community. And it is a really complete picture of people and communities. And it is a very rewarding album, I'm sure, for Adam to have made. And I know that from reading reviews and interviews with him, he feels that's his most personal work to date. I don't know if I would say it is their best work to date. That's just how strong the back catalog is, but it is right up there with the best work that Low Cut Connie has done. And I think it's a perfect spot for us to end. And right on the cusp of my top 20 is where Low Cut Connie's Art Dealers arrives. So we will dive into the top 20 beginning with the next video in this series, and I hope that you'll stick with me. We'll go 20 to number 11 in the next edition, and then we'll round it up by revealing the top 10. Please be sure to like and comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know which ones you enjoy the most, what recommendations you have. I look forward to hearing them, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.